Chapter 36. The driver, having observed through the gusting low clouds, candle-lit windows in the distance, now notifies those of us below that we are approaching an inn. The ladies begin to stir and pat, lean together and discuss. Men relight their pipes and consult their watches and, more discreetly, their pocket books. The rush of the weather past the smooth outer shell, a surface lacquered as secretly as the finest Cremona violin, smoothly abates, silences, to be replaced by the crisp shouts of hostlers and stable boys. We observe linkmen waiting in a double line, as if at some ceremony of German mystics, their torches sparking intensely yellow at the edges as they illuminate the falling snowflakes. In the partial light, the immense log structure seems to tower toward the clouds until no more can be seen, though the clouds at the moment are low, whilst horizontally sprawling away into an arrangement of courtyards and passageways, till likewise lost to the eye. Such complexity recalling Holy Land bazaars and zouks, even in the wintry setting, save that in this quarter nothing is ancient. The logs are still beaded with clear drops of resin, and none of the walls inside attached directly to them, the building having not yet had even a season to settle. The pots in the kitchen are still bright, the edges yet upon the cutlery, bed linens folded away that haven't yet been romped or even slept among. This new inn is an overnight stop for everybody with business upon the communication. Quite near a rope ferry from Bloomery Creek, one of the 1,000 rivers and branches flowing into Chesapeake. Wagoners are as welcome as coach parties, and both sorts of traveller, for the time being, find this acceptable. There's a long front porch and 2 entrances, one into the bar room and the other into the family parlour, with passage between them only after a complicated search within among doors and staircases more and less evident. Meanwhile, the astronomers, returning from Lancaster, are attending the day's cloudy sky as closely as they might a starry one at night. "Can't say I'm too easy with this weather," Mason remarks. "Do thou mean those white flake-like objects blowing out of the northeast?" "Actually, I lost sight of the trees about 15 minutes ago." "Another bonny gone on they've got us into. Are we even upon the road?" "Hold! Is that a light?" "Don't try to get out of it that way." "I am making it snow? Is that what you mean to assert here? How on earth could I do that, Dixon? Pray, regard yourself, sir." "Thou predicted a fair passage back to the tents. Indeed, we have wagered a pistol." "You would, of course, mention it." Bickering energetically, they make their way toward the lights, and at length enter the very inn where your narrator, lately arrived, is already down a pipe and a pint, only to be brought to dumbfounded silence at the sight of one whom they've not seen since the Cape of Good Hope. "Are we never to be rid of him, then?" cries Dixon. "An hallucination," Mason assures him, "brought on by the snow, the vanishing of detail, the brain's anxiety to fill the vacuum at any cost." "Well met, sirs," I reply. "And it gets worse." I reach in my pockets and find and unscroll my commission, which, all but knocking pates, they read hastily. "Party chaplain? Who asked for a chaplain?" "Certainly not I." "You don't mean I?" "'Twas part of a side letter to the consent decree in Chancery," I explain helpfully, "that there be a chaplain." "Most of them will be Presbyterians, Rev, when they're not German sectarians or Irish Catholics." "The Royal Society, however, is solidly Anglican." "Chaplain," says Mason. "Eh," says Dixon. As torch or taper light takes over from the light of the sunset, what are those faces gathered before some window, raising toasts, preparing for the evening ahead, if not assured of life forever? As travellers come in by ones and twos to smells of tobacco and chops, as fiddle players tune their strings and starved horses eat from the trough in the courtyard, as young women flee to and fro dumb with fatigue, and small boys down in strata of their own go swarming upon ceaseless errands, skidding upon the straw, as smoke begins to fill the smoking room, how may death come here? Mr. Knockwood, the landlord, a sort of trans-elemental Uncle Toby, spends hours every day, not with earth fortifications, but studying rather the passage of water across his land, and constructing elaborate works to divert its flow, not to mention his guests. "You don't smoke how it is," he argues. "All that has to happen is some beaver, miles upstream from here, moves a single pebble. Suddenly, down here, everything's changed. The creek's a mile away, running through the horse barn. Acres of forest no longer exist, and that beaver don't even know what he's done." And he stands, glaring, as if this hypothetical animal were the fault of the patient listener. The weather continues to worsen. Tap room regulars come in to voice openly comparisons to the winter of 63 and 64, the freezing and floods. New casks of peach brandy are opened daily. The Knockwoods begin to raise their voices. "But I was saving that one." For what? The Book of Revelations? These are cash customers. The assembly room is not Bath. Here congregate all the agentry of the province, land jobbers and labour crimps, tool mongers and gypsy bricklayers, as well as the curious well-to-do from further east, including all the way back across the ocean. The waggoners keep together, seeking or creating their own snugs, and the men of affairs arrange for separate rooms. Those that remain tend to run to the quarrelsome. "Where may one breathe?" demands one continental macaroni in a yellow waistcoat. "In New York, taverns have rooms where smoke is prohibited." "Though clearly," replies the itinerant stove salesman, Mr. Whitpot, drawing vigorously at his pipe, "what's needed is a no idiots area." The youth at this makes a motion, less threatening than vexed, toward the hanger he wears habitually at his side, though upon which he happens at the moment to be sitting. "Well, and you're a swine. Who cares what a swine thinks?" "Peevish Mr. Dimdown," coos Mrs. Edgewise, reaching behind the youth's ear and underneath his wig to produce a silver pistol she has no intention, however, of offering to him. "Do resheathe your weapon, there's a good young gentleman." Mistress of a diverting repertoire of conjuring tricks with playing cards, dice, coins, herbs, liquids and flasks, gentlemen's watches, handkerchiefs, weapons, beetles and bugs, and short excursions up the chain of being therefrom to pigeons upon occasion, and squirrels, she has brought to the mud courtyards of Trans-Susquehannian inns country folk from miles about to gather into a crepuscular murmur. No fabled telegraph so swift as this diffusion among them of a word that a magician is in the neighbourhood. In this autumn cold, out in the rain, beneath the generally unseen rising of the Pleiades, she has been trooping on, cheerfully rendering subjunctive for, contrary to fact, familiar laws of nature and of common sense. Despite her skills and legerdemain, her husband seldom, if ever, will allow her to accompany him upon his gaming ventures. Ever subject to evaporations of reserve, she will now and then inquire, why not? Receiving the dyspeptic equivalent of a gallant smile. "Madam, to visit ye upon, even gaze upon such doings would I fear my honeyed apiary prove no easy burden to sensibilities as finely rigged out as your own. Therefore must I advise against it, with regret yet vehemence as well, my tuzzy muzzy." "I know your vehemence. It is of little account with me." "Among my acquaintance," remarks Mr. Dimdown, fondling his hanger, "no woman would dare address her husband in that way without incurring a prolonged chastisement." As the phrase scientifically describes life with Mr. Edgewise, Your acquaintance need not, on this occasion at least, suffer disappointment. In a distant corner, Louisa, and Mitzi are engaged in a discussion as to hair. I want it all different lengths, fiercely. I don't want to fasten it close to my head. I don't want to cover it. I want people to see it. I want boys to see it. "'Tis a brumal night, for behold, it sweepeth by," announces Squire Hulligast from the shadows, resuming his silence as everyone falls silent to attend thereupon. For the gnomic squire, on the rare occasions he speaks, does so with an intensity suggesting to more than one of the guests either useful prophecy or bedlamite entertainment. This is the room Mason and Dixon descend into, where all is yet too new for the scent of hops and malt to have quite worked in. Rather fugitive odours of gums and resins, of smoke from pipes and fires, of horses upon the garments of the company, come and go unmixed. The winter light creeps in and becomes confused among the glassware, a wrinkled, bright stain. "You're the astronomers," Mr. Knockwood greets them. "The Reverend has been speaking of you." When they come to explain about the 2 transits of Venus and the American work filling the years between, "By heaven, a sandwich!" cries Mr. Edgewise. "Take good care, sirs, that something don't come along and eat it." His pleasure at being able to utter a recently minted word is at once much curtailed by the volatile chef de cuisine, Amand Allegre, who rushes from the kitchen screaming, "Sandwich! Sandwich!" gesticulating as well. "To the sacrament of the eating! It is ever the grand insult." Cries of "Anti-Britannic" and "Shame, Monsieur!" Mitzi clutches herself. "No mercy. Oh, he's so cute." Young Dimdown may be seen working himself up to a level of indignation that will allow him at least to pull out his naked hanger again and wave it about a bit. "Where I come from," he offers, "Lord Sandwich is as much respected for his nobility as admired for his ingenuity in creating the great modern advance in diet which bears his name, and I would suggest, without of course wishing to offend, that it ill behooves some bloody little toad-eating foreigner to speak his name in any but a respectful manner." "Had I my batterie de couteau," replies the Frenchman, with more gallantry than sense, "before that ridiculous little blade is out of his sheath, I can bone you like the veal." "Stop it," admonishes the Reverend, "both of you. Not all the sensibilities here are grown as coarsened as your own. The eponym in dispute," he continues to point out to the macaroni, "better known these days as Jemmy Twitcher, withal, is a vile-mouthed drunkard, a foolish gambler, and a sodomitical rake, who betrayed his dear friend for the sake of, let us say, a certain caress from the feeble hand of Geordie, Jack Boots' pathetic creature. "By heaven, a Wilkesite!" cries Mr. Edgewise. "Right here among us. Imagine it, my crown of thorns." "The Lord's long night of gaming draws to a close," pronounces Squire Hulligast. "The object in its journey comes nigh. Among the excursions of chance, the sinners of ministers, the inscriptions upon walls and gateposts, the birth of the sandwich, at this exact moment in Christianity, one of the noble and fallen for its angel. Discs of secular bread, enclosing whilst concealing slices of real flesh, yet a sop with blood, under the earthly guise of British beef, all, but for the species of course, consubstantiate thus the sandwich, Eucharist of this our age." Thereupon, retracting his head into the recklessly tossed folds of his neckcloth, and saying no more. "Precisely so," blares Mr. Edgewise, striking his wife smartly upon the leg. "Oh, beg pardon, my dear, thought it was meself I was thumping upon. Well, well, a long night of gaming for us all, isn't it? Even if it is usually in the daytime. Day after quo, not to mention quotidian day. Now ain't that correct, my cherry daw?" At table next morning, instead of the gusts of grease smoke she expected venting from the kitchen, Louisa Redzinger is agreeably surprised to find fragrances already familiar from her own cooking, and withal strange deviations, what she will later identify as garlic for one, and a shameless overusage of butter in place of lard for another. "Do you not consider it a sin, even in the English church?" she accosts Reverend Cherrycoke. "You could not find this even in Bethlehem at Christmas-tide." The object is a croissant. "A sort of everyday roll among the French, who put butter in all they cook, madam," the worldly Mr. Edgewise instructs her. Half a dozen more of which her daughter, less scandalized, has already accounted for, though no fingers in the room go altogether ungreased by these palatable pastries, which keep arriving from some distant oven, one great steaming platterful after another. "More likely the devil's work," sniffs the beauteous sectarian, "than any Frenchman so," but with a strange, what indeed is later thought to be hopeful, lift at the end of it. "Well then," bustles their host, "how'd you like to meet him in person?" She gasps. Whenever she tells the story after that, she will put in, "My heart almost stopped, for I thought he meant the devil." But he means his newly hired chef, the diminutive and athletic Monsieur Armand Allègre, whose white toque, half again as tall as he, she has noticed once or twice flashing in the kitchen doorway, even through pipe murk and this dark daybreak, more brightly, in fact, than there is light to account for it. "Here, Frenchy, Venez-y, one of our guests wishes to present her compliments. He winks at the eaters at nearby tables. Lord Affability. Gentle sir, Frau Redzinger, fixing him with a gaze whose calmness is precarious at best. He may cook whatever he pleases. I will not preach him a sermon. Oh, he's a good sort. You needn't worry. He's not all that French. Here then. Introduced by their jocund host, the Frenchman sweeps off his toque, causing a trio of candles nearby to gutter for a moment, and stands before her, exposed in his true altitude, hardly taking breaths, as she, meantime, 'tis clear to one or two of the company, sits likewise transfixed, the croissant in her posed hand, shedding flakes as a late flower its petals. But by the unabated noise in the room, it would seem the moment has passed unremarked. She, as if becoming aware of the, as it now turns out, already half-eaten article she holds, shakes it slowly at him in reluctant tribute. How did you do this? Madame, I am even now about to begin a new batch of the croissant dough. I would be honoured if you would care to observe our little kitchen at work. From somewhere producing a simple turned hickory cylinder, some 20 inches long and perhaps 2 across. My rolling pin, urging her to take it in her hesitant hands. Appreciate the weight, the smoothness, and give it a sample roll or two upon the table. Frowning, curious, she complies. Presently, her voice lower. It pays well, this job, Net? He shrugs, his thoughts elsewhere. Were it thousands, sighing as if they were the only two in the room, and forcefully grasping his own face by the cheeks. Yet would you behold the face of melancholy. Alas, once the most celebrated chef in France, now alone among foreign peasants and skin-wearing primitives, with no chance of escaping. And even if I could, where would I go? When all civilized, I mean, of course, French, soil is forbidden to my foot. Even in the Illinois, even in the far mountains of Louisiana, it would seek me out and remain with motives too alien for any human ever to know. It? How dreadful! Who dislikes you so much? Who, alas, a human pursuer I perhaps could elude. Fascinated herself, she has missed completely his effect upon Mitzi, who is sitting there flushed and dazed, with as clear an incipient case of the green pip as Mrs. Edgewise has met since her own girlhood. She leans from an adjoining table. Do you wish to faint, child? Courteously, the girl's eyelids and lashes swing downward, at least for as long as she can bear it, till presently, in a weightless languor, sweeping up again for another quick glance at Armand. The older woman straightens again, shaking her head with a smile, in which ordinary mirth, though present, is far from the only element. As meanwhile Monsieur Allegre proceeds, before a room full of what, to his mind, must seem unfeeling barbarians, to recite his Iliad of inconvenience. End of chapter.